Protests in Charlotte were relatively peaceful on the third night of demonstrations, but tensions remain, and calls are growing for officials to release tapes of the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott. This afternoon, we got our first look at the cell phone video captured by Scott's wife during Tuesday's incident. We're going to show you part of it now. We warn you, it is very disturbing.
Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He has no weapon. He has no weapon. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He didn't do anything. He doesn't have a gun. He has a TBI. He's not going to do anything to you guys. He just took his medicine.
Drop the gun. Let me get out of here.
Keith, don't let them break the windows. Come on out the car.
Drop the gun.
Keith, don't do it.
Drop the gun.
Keith, get out the car. Keith, don't you do it. Don't you do it. Keith, don't you do it. Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him?
You could clearly hear officers telling Scott to drop a gun, but it's unclear from the footage whether he actually did have a weapon. His wife claims that he did not. Police maintain that he did. After viewing the video, police took. The lawyer for the Scott family can't say for certain what happened.
We're not, throwing out accusations. We just want to know the facts. At the end of the day, if it is proven and the evidence supports that he did have a firearm, I can tell you that based on what I saw on those two videos yesterday, I believe it's still questionable as to whether or not he should have been shot and killed.
Kimberly, this is an unusual circumstance, and technology is changing, possibly changing the way the cases are going to be prosecuted in the future, because the calls from the protesters last night and from the family are for the police to release the video. Typically they don't, and I'll let you explain why and why this is so unusual.
Right, so anything recovered at the scene and or anything that memorializes a crime that's occurred or potential crimes part of the investigation would be marked and kept as evidence for the police and for the prosecutors to review. So it's highly unusual for a tape to be released. I think given what was going on in the riots and the public safety issues, they want to make sure that at least there's some transparency to show the family, to provide them some understanding of a situation. Now here, in this case, I mean, it's really unbelievable and graphic, and again, I'm sure it's very disturbing even for the viewers to see. So if you get an idea from at least that angle of what was going down and what was transpiring, at the time. So what's interesting is the wife is actually an eyewitness. She's a percipient witness, but it's also memorialized within that videotape. Now, of course, it would also, if it was going to be introduced per se into evidence, they would have to, authenticate, make sure nothing's been edited, etc., that it's in its original condition from the time when it was shot at first.
And Juan, from what I can gather, we just hear her voice, we don't see her face, but she sounds remarkably calm, and she's telling the police don't shoot him, as if perhaps maybe she knew that there was going to be trouble. I was trying to understand that part of it.
Well, the police have guns drawn, and so that's evident. But the thing that struck me in this very disturbing tape is that she says he has, I think what she called TBI, traumatic brain injury. He's just taken his medication or something like that about his medication. She is pleading with the police. They are not responding to her, even as she's speaking very clearly, and I think, calmly to them. So to me, it's like, somebody said to me, but of course the police are zoned in on a potential threat, so you can't. But you know what? My experience, I used to be a police reporter. There are other police around, including not only the police who are focused on the guy in the car. And remember, they had gone there searching for someone else. So again, we can focus on the details, and I don't know how it'll all come out, but I just don't want us to miss the storm by staring at a raindrop. And the storm is, I think at this moment with video, more and more people saying, you know what, there's a problem nationwide with police using excessive force, especially deadly force, against poor people, and usually poor black or Latino people.
Eric, what do you think of the Scott family lawyer who is saying that...
Can I just refute one thing that Juan just said? I'm sorry, Dan.
Go for it.
The numbers are actually directly proportional to the race of the person committing a violent crime. The number of people killed, whether you're white, black, or Hispanic, is directly in proportion to the amount of crimes, violent crimes, you commit.
Eric,
so cops aren't targeting black people.
Oh my
Cops are
gosh.
targeting people who commit violent crime. That's
Oh,
that.
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
He committed a violent crime?
It's one example. No.
What
No,
about
no.
the guy in Tulsa? Did he commit a violent
Juan,
crime?
But I guarantee you, if you
So that's ridiculous,
if you
Eric.
dig deep enough,
Oh my
you will
God.
find a white person
I see.
or a Hispanic
Yeah,
person.
Eric, I don't think
who
white
is-
people in the country are
who is shot
complaining
by a
that
cop
police
after a
are...
traffic stop.
You
That's
think
all I'm
white
saying.
people in the country are complaining that they're being
One,
targeted by
you
police?
just said that black people, the poor people, are being targeted, and the numbers bear out from the Department of
said-
Justice that it's exactly proportional to the amount of violent crimes that racial group
Eric,
commits. Has
that's
nothing to do with
not
race.
relevant
Period.
to this case.
I'm
What's
just
relevant
refuting
is
what you said. Well, anyway,
that's
can I
not.
comment
No,
on the video?
No, I think let's let him
What's
finish.
relevant here is the number of black people who are fatally shot by police. And we know it's about
exactly
24%.
proportional. Right, and guess what,
the
Juan?
percentage of the population is
No,
13.
that is irrelevant. What's relevant is 22.4% of all violent crimes are committed by black people.
So in other words,
it's
if you
the
see
same
me,
number.
so if Eric Bowling is a cop and he sees Juan Williams,
you
he
gotta
says,
take a
"Oh,
stats
you're a
class.
criminal.
You
I'm
gotta
going to
take
shoot
a
and
stats
kill
class.
you."
You ready for this?
Come on, baby.
You ready for this? White people are killed by cops at a 48% rate. Of all the people killed by cops, 48% of are white people.
The
They also
majority of
commit
the population.
43%.
You want to know what the population is? Like
43%.
70% of the population's white.
Listen, we should move on, but your numbers are absolutely wrong.
I'll go up against you on this one any day of the week.
Anytime. So look at the DOJ. DOJ put out statistics on violent crimes, who commits them, at what percentage,
You're going
what
to
rate.
justify this?
It's the same rate as the people being killed by cops, Juan.
man.
Identical. Hispanics, about the same population as blacks. They're
right.
also killed at the same rate.
I think we've beaten that
This is
horse.
an example of the unbending mind. It's that it is so difficult to have a conversation about this because we go to our respective sides. There are statistics that tell a story. There is an emotional story being told as well, right? There's an emotional story that is being driven by tape. When I look at that tape, I don't get any idea of what happened because I can't see it.
Right.
And I feel that what we're seeing aren't necessarily answers, but incredibly moving emotion and fear and adrenaline. But I don't see what is actually happening. And the interesting, you were going to talk about the deceased man's lawyer, and it seemed to me that he was admitting that there was a weapon, but that might not be enough.
Well, he said that even if there were, he doesn't believe that he needed to be shot and killed.
Right, yeah. But he did not deny that there was a weapon there. I think that's kind of interesting, given the fact that I can't, like, I'm looking at a storm, a chaotic storm, where there are things happening everywhere, and I can't figure out what's going on there. All I know is that it's emotional.
Can I point something out? That would be the reason. Now, there's privacy rights issues going on because everyone's not going to be a traffic stop that ends up in a fatality. Body cams can be used for other things. And so there are issues, as Kimberly points out. But when a tape is released, and there's already been commentary about another tape, a cop tape, that's not released, by both sides commenting on it, it may supersede that privacy right in this case. And also, when it also spreads beyond the community of Charlotte, where other cities may end up in racial riots based on that tape not being released, it's time to release the tape.
This is not about riots. This is about accountability and transparency. And, you know, we're not focused on the tape. There's a tape earlier in the week from Tulsa where the man's just standing in the street with his hands up. Nobody is arguing about that because the cop has been charged in that case. And we can go over it if you guys want to focus on each specific case. But
We should, actually.
But if you do, Greg, I think what you're going to do is you're going to get locked into the specifics as opposed to understanding what is a common issue now nationwide.
You said something very important. I want to be locked into specifics. Specifics are what tell the story. And an officer has been arrested and charged with manslaughter in Tulsa. There was another charge with murder for shooting a man in the back down south. Justice is meted out when you get to the specifics. But if you ignore the specifics for the general storyline, the general narrative, the narrative reality suffers. It suffers.
I think we're missing the point.
Oh, go ahead.
No, but because I am going to agree with you on that the story is we're talking about the statistics of death, but we're not talking about, Kimberly, I'll just go to you because you haven't really had a chance to talk, is the perception, and perception is reality if you're living it, that African Americans and Latinos, especially in poor neighborhoods, are more often going to be pulled over. Maybe they are involved in more crime. Maybe they are targeted more by police. Maybe the police, regardless black and white, are more aggressive with African Americans than they are with the rest of the population.
And that perception and that belief is the emotional trigger in this situation.
Right.
So whether or not the facts support that there was a weapon at the scene, and so far from the chief, we are hearing, because now an independent investigative board, the State Investigations Bureau, has taken this over, which is customary in officer-involved shootings. They are now processing the forensics and the evidence recovered at the scene. And he said, if you remember statements we made before, we still believe that is consistent with what they will find out. I cannot speak to the investigation further, which is a telling point. You will not hear further from the chief about the gun or
Is that the kind of work
else.
you did in California, though, when you would go back and check after a shooting, that you would be sent to the scene?
You'd get a
to
page,
check?
you'd go directly to the scene whenever it was an officer-involved shooting or death at the hands of an officer or an inmate in custody, anything like that. You would go, you would rope it off, you'd take all the evidence in, you would question every single officer present at the scene and make a determination as to whether or not to file charges, manslaughter, murder, etc. And that would happen. So it's an independent investigative body doing it, so the police department isn't investigating.
And one last thought on this, which is he had a gun, but it's not legal to have a gun. He's in his car, he's in his private place.
Is he a convicted felon?
I don't know.
I believe he is.
Oh, but that doesn't mean he can't have a gun.
Well, yeah, but
yes,
he
it
also
does.
got out of,
he had an illegal gun?
I believe, I mean, for a permit to carry?
But
I don't know.
But when you don't have
Somebody
to point
knows.
a gun at a cop in order for that cop to feel threatened and to put the perp down.
But it's more likely than if you're a black guy and you illegally have a gun, as we know from the Minnesota case. Oh, boom. You're dead.
No, but the point is he was out of the car. Who
was out of the car?
Keith was out of the car. It said, Keith.
I don't know if he was
get out of the car. Don't let them break the window. Well, no, he was.
Yeah, she was asking him not to break the window and for him to get out of the car and just be.
You got to run.
But if you got out of the car with a gun.
It also, under North Carolina law, doesn't have to be pointed at the officer to constitute imminent threat for them to be able to trigger
they were not looking for him.
Force.
They were not searching for him, Greg. He was not any suspect. He's a private citizen in his car.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, we do feel for the family. And